My name is Clara. The week before my wedding to Ethan was supposed to be a gilded, effortless dream. Every moment had been curated, every detail pressed and polished like the silverware that would soon rest upon the wedding tables. Our lives together had seemed like a painting of domestic perfection, smooth brushstrokes, calm colors, no room for doubt or darkness. Ethan was the kind of man mothers prayed their daughters would find: kind, responsible, successful, endlessly devoted. He was calm where I was anxious, steady where I wavered. Together, we were balance, or at least that was what I believed. Our life had been planned meticulously. We had chosen the townhouse near the park, mapped out our finances, even agreed on potential baby names: Emma if it was a girl, Daniel if it was a boy. Our wedding was not merely a ceremony, it was a performance of stability, a union of two polished families. My parents were delighted, my father, especially, who adored Ethan's manners, his steady career, and the way he never forgot to open doors for me. The invitations had been mailed, the florist had been paid, and my dress, a masterpiece of silk and ivory lace, hung in the corner of my childhood bedroom, glowing softly in the afternoon light. The wedding was in 4 days. Then the secret came out. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my mother's living room, surrounded by swatches of napkin colors and tiny, handwritten place cards. The air smelled faintly of lilies. I was tired but content, the way you are when every corner of your life seems to fit neatly into its place. Then my phone buzzed. The message was anonymous. No name, no greeting, just a short line and a link. You deserve to know who you're marrying. My stomach tightened. For a moment, I almost deleted it. I wanted to believe it was a prank, a petty act from some forgotten rival or an envious acquaintance. But curiosity, that small, cruel spark of self-preservation, forced my thumb to tap the link. A folder opened. It was filled with PDF documents. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw the names: Ethan Price, Lighthouse Ventures, Collection Notice, Default, Final Demand. The numbers blurred before my eyes. Not a few $100s, not even a few thousand. A six-figure debt, $185,000 accumulated over 3 years. Personal loans, failed business investments, lawsuits pending. Every file was a wound, each document another layer of deception. I stared at the screen as my vision tunneled. The place cards slipped from my shaking hands, scattering across the Persian rug like fallen leaves. It wasn't the money that shattered me. It was the lie. The realization that the man I had built my future around, the man who spoke to me of transparency, of unity, of shared dreams, had lived a double life right under my nose. I called him. "Ethan," I said, my voice shaking. "What is Lighthouse Ventures?" There was a silence so deep it felt alive. Then came the smallest, most devastating exhale. "Clara," he said quietly, "where did you get that?" His voice was thin, stripped of its familiar steadiness. "Answer the question," I said. $185,000. 3 creditors. 2 default notices. Why did you lie? He didn't argue. He didn't try to pretend. He said he was coming over. When he arrived, he looked like a man walking to his own execution. He stood in the doorway, pale, eyes hollow. He didn't kiss me, didn't try to reach for me right away. He simply whispered, "I was going to tell you. I just needed time." I said nothing. My silence pressed against him until he broke. He told me everything, or at least what he called everything. Lighthouse Ventures had been his dream, a small tech startup he'd launched 3 years ago. It had failed miserably. He had borrowed to keep it afloat, telling himself each month that the next deal would save him. When it didn't, he borrowed more. He said he was ashamed, that he didn't want to disappoint me or my parents, that he felt inferior to my family's stability, that he wanted to prove he could stand beside me as an equal. "I thought I could fix it," he said, tears spilling down his face. "If the business turned around, you would never have to know. I was going to sell the assets, pay off the loans, and start fresh. It would have been our secret." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't feel like my own. "Our secret?" I repeated. "You were ready to stand beside me in front of our families and swear lifelong honesty while hiding a financial time bomb that could destroy both of us. You were ready to start our marriage with a lie." He tried to touch me then, but I stepped back. I couldn't bear his nearness. His presence felt like an infection. "I did it for you," he whispered. "No," I said. "You did it for the version of me you wanted to impress." When I told my parents, the air in the house grew thick and cold. My mother covered her mouth. My father's face went gray with disappointment. The wedding wasn't just an emotional event, it was an investment, a social alliance, a statement of pride. They were angry at Ethan, but they were also furious about the spectacle, the humiliation of canceling a wedding so close to the date. "It's not the money," my father said finally, his voice soft but unyielding. "It's the character. You don't build a life with someone who lies this deeply. If he can hide this, he can hide anything." His words didn't comfort me. They buried me. For 3 nights, I didn't sleep. I walked through the house like a ghost, touching the fabric samples, the gifts, the framed engagement photos. Everything looked absurd, as if I'd been living inside a catalog rather than a life. Ethan called constantly, his voice raw, desperate. He said he would sign anything, get therapy, sell his car, move in with his parents, anything to prove that he could make it right. He wrote long emails about the future, about our love, about how one mistake shouldn't erase everything we'd built. But every time I reread those words, something inside me recoiled. Because the problem wasn't his debt, it was his silence, his decision to play God with the truth. Marriage is a vow, yes, but it is also a contract of reality. It demands that two people stand naked before each other, stripped of pretense. I had offered him my truth. He had offered me a performance. Friday night arrived the night before the rehearsal dinner. My wedding dress hung before me like an accusation. I touched the fabric one last time and realized something painful but clear. Walking down that aisle would not be a celebration. It would be a burial of my dignity, of my ability to ever believe him again. At midnight, I made the calls. I canceled the venue, the catering, the photographer. I cried while I did it, my tears falling between words like rain through cracks in stone. By dawn, it was done. Saturday, the day I was supposed to become Mrs. Clara Price. Instead, I woke up in my old bedroom, sunlight pooling across the floor, the world outside glowing in perfect autumn gold. I wore a silk robe, my hair undone, my heart heavy but strangely calm. My mother knocked softly before entering. She held a cup of tea and a sorrowful look. "Ethan is outside," she said quietly. "He says he just wants to talk. One last time." I nodded. I owed the ending its dignity. He stood on the porch, not in a tuxedo, but in a gray suit, the one he'd worn on our first date. His eyes were red, his face drawn. "I know I lost you," he said before I could speak. "I accept that, but please believe me. Clara, I am not a bad man. I was a scared man. I was terrified of losing you, of not being enough. I thought if I could just fix everything before you knew, I could spare you the pain." His voice broke. That fear made me a liar. I looked at him, really looked. The man I had loved so deeply stood before me like a stranger wearing his skin. He was still beautiful, still gentle in manner, but everything between us had already turned to ash. "Maybe you're not a bad man," I said quietly, "but you chose to protect your image instead of our truth. You wanted the wedding, not the marriage. You murdered trust before it even had a chance to live." He looked down, silent. "I can't build a future on a lie, Ethan," I continued. "I need a man who can tell me the truth even when it burns. Because love built on concealment isn't love, it's illusion. And I refuse to live inside an illusion." I took a deep breath, steady and final. "So, this is goodbye." Then I turned and walked back into the house. That day, I didn't walk down an aisle. I didn't wear the dress or the veil. I didn't become a wife. But in a strange, painful way, I became something stronger, a woman who understood that peace is worth more than promises, and truth is worth more than perfection. The invitations, the decorations, the money, all of it faded into irrelevance. Because the real vow, the unspoken one, is the promise to yourself: never betray your own truth for someone else's comfort. Ethan taught me that, not through love, but through the ruin of it. And though it broke my heart to close that door, I knew that I wasn't walking away from a future. I was walking away from a foundation built on sand,